Hey guys, welcome back to the Dimensions Woodworks Wood Shop. Today we're going to take a tour around my tiny little backyard shop just to see what I have to work with and to see what you can accomplish with a few tools and a lot of determination. Stay tuned. So we're going to start off with the tool that gets quite a bit of use here in my shop, my Craftsman 12-inch bandsaw. This thing was designed to be a bandsaw slash sander, so you can actually run a sanding belt in there and use it for a belt sander as well. I've made a few modifications to my bandsaw. Namely, number one, I put basically a zero clearance plate on the top. Just a piece of plywood with a curved cut to the blade, so that when I'm cutting very intricate tiny pieces on here, they don't fall through and get choked up in the throat of the saw, which is a problem that I had prior to putting this piece of plywood on there. Really simple trick that I got from Mr. Jimmy DeResta. It works absolutely fantastic. Moving right along, set up next to the bandsaw is my dust collector. It's just a shop vac on a dust collection cart with a 5-gallon bucket and a Dust Deputy Cyclone on top. Now this is another great essential tool to my shop. It's another Frankenstein project. We have a 60-gallon tank, which we've mounted a General Electric motor on. I'm not really sure on the horsepower on that guy, and a cobalt compressor. My father-in-law had bits and pieces of this unit laying around and threw something together for me that works and fits my needs great. Next to my compressor are my clamps. These shelves were installed when I purchased the building, so I just left them there and put my clamps on them. Haven't really built a specialized clamp rack as I've had no need. Next to my clamp rack is my finishing shelf. This shelf houses my glues, my spray paints, my clear finishes, my stains, and any other things I may need in the realm of finishing. And tucked between the finishing shelf and my lumber rack is my Yanico router bit set. This set is a great value for beginning woodworkers. While they're not the highest of quality, you get quite the assortment for a very reasonable price. Up next we have a small lumber rack. Another J. Bates inspired build. It's just 3/4 inch conduit with holes drilled into a 2x4 and set in there at an angle. This houses most of the pallet boards that I break down that I use on several occasions. So this is my Grizzly 6-inch joiner. It was a local Craigslist find, and it was in pretty rough shape when I picked it up. Being here near the Gulf of Mexico, the salt water tends to rust cast iron and steel very, very quickly. So the joiner beds were in pretty rough shape, but I got them cleaned up. I ordered a new set of blades, and this thing has worked great for me in my shop. I do a ton of panel glue ups, so while many of you out there may not find that this is an essential piece of equipment, it is definitely crucial to the things that I do in my shop. So with the joiner moved out of the way, I then have access to my lathe. So this is my Craftsman 12-inch tube style lathe. And for a lot of you wood turners that have been around for a while, you probably have seen a lathe like this. It has a single tube construction, and the banjo and the tailstock slide up and down the tube for the adjustment. Now there is no digital readout. The way that this tool's speed is adjusted is the old school Craftsman style, where there are several pulleys on the inside of the casing, and you have to change the pulley ratio in order to take the speed up or down depending on the item that you're turning. The way I have it mounted is the lathe itself is mounted to these really cool old pine boards that used to actually be a lumber mill in New Orleans. The person who owned that mill kept these boards, these old several 100-year-old pine boards, and mounted this lathe to the boards. So then I've taken these boards and mounted gate hinges to them so that it can swivel up and out of the way. Then when I'm ready to use it, I can swivel it down, and I've set the height of those hinges to fit perfectly on my sawhorses. It works great. Now moving on, shop bridge, which doubles as my sticker wall. Then we have the router table, our sanding station, which has basically all of my sandpaper backups for flat sheet sponges and micro zips. That works really well. Then I've got a little basic odds and ends storage for random nuts and bolts and things that I may need to use, and safety glasses above that for, PPE. Then we have our DeWalt 12-inch sliding compound miter saw. This saw is one of the very few tools in this shop that was purchased brand new. Prior to this, I had an old Craftsman 12-inch miter saw that I just could not get square, and I got so unbelievably frustrated that this had to be an addition to where I could just make square 90 or 45 or any angle in between cuts and know that that angle would be true. Next to the miter saw is my Delta 6-inch benchtop grinder. I have a very simple setup on this. One side is just a grinding wheel, the other side is a buffing wheel. Then we have the Craftsman 10-inch variable speed drill press. There have only been a few instances where I have wished that I had a larger floor standing option, but footprint is essential in a very small shop, so this benchtop model works great for pretty much everything I need it for. The variable speed is set up the same as the lathe and many other older Craftsman tools. You simply open the top of the unit and you find a belt-driven system with variable sizes of pulleys. Most of the Craftsman tools that were manufactured in this era that have variable speed have these little charts here to let you know exactly which pulley configuration to use to achieve a certain set RPM. So here we have a tool that I've seen in small guys shops and really big guys shops, all the way up to Bob and I Like to Make Stuff. This is the Central Machinery 36-inch combo belt disc sander. Now this is what most woodworkers consider to be the heart of their shop. The table saw, outfeed, workbench / assembly table, I have all rolled into one. On the end, I have a roll of paper so that when I'm doing glue ups, I can keep the glue from sticking to the worktop surface. I also have a little Irwin screw vise that allows me to do hand work, whether planing or cutting dovetails, mortise and tenons. That thing is a great value for the money. Then, on the opposing side, I have a power strip that runs the length of the bench. This allows me to plug in my sanders, my planers, any other power tools that I may need, wood burner, whatever the project requires, I have immediate access to power, and it's all built into this one compact unit. And as the power plant for this area, there is a 10-inch Porter cable compact job site saw. So even though this bench was constructed out of leftover and scrap material, most of which I found on the side of the road, there are a couple cool features, and this is one of them. I've used a couple of 2x4s attached to a door hinge with a caster on the bottom of that with a 1x that swings from a lag bolt right there. So what that allows me to do is when I lift up on the bench, that swings freely and puts pressure on those to engage the casters into the floor. Just a homemade version of Rockler's casters that allow you to push down on a lever and roll your bench around. Then beneath the workbench, I have storage for my scroll saw, my 12-inch planer, my power planer, and I typically keep my sanders in this area as well. Another major tool that I use on almost every build is my camera stand. You can check out the video on how I built this camera stand right here. But basically it's just an articulating arm mounted to a 4x4 post with a very heavy base, and then a platform that holds a gimbal that allows me to hold the camera and position it in several different angles throughout the shop. And because my old workbench is no longer suiting my needs, I now have the wood for my new workbench, which is a project we will get started on soon. Beyond that is a lot of scrap. There's a lot of trim of cherry, oak, maple, poplar, and pine trim stored beneath that. Then we have several turning blanks, a lot of live edge slabs. This is where I keep most of my live edge product. That's a pecan slab right there that will be the chop for the leg vise on my new workbench. Then quite a bit of red oak stacked up there with that little piece of cypress in the middle, but most of that is red oak. I also have these little scrap bins up here that I have built into the roof. So another thing that you guys rarely see whenever I make these videos is my plywood rack. So this was one of the first things I built when we purchased the home, just to have a place to store sheet goods and get them up out of the way. Now, saving the best for last, we make it back to my reclaimed wood tool wall. This was constructed out of God only knows how many pallets, and I have no idea exactly how many species of wood are involved in this build, though it is a lot. The main frame construction for the cabinet was all done with cedar. So I did the frame construction for the cabinet and the doors out of cedar. Then it was 2x4s around the back. I laid a piece of 5mm plywood on top of that, and then assembled the pattern that you see here. Each one of the tool holders is handmade, and it's basically a piece of oak with a hole drilled through it and an oak dowel going in, and then 2 screws that attach it to the tool wall to give me this layout. Obviously, certain things are a little bit different, a little bit of a variation on that, but most of the tool holders are oak with an oak dowel. You also have the chisel holder. This was another piece of reclaimed material that originated at a John Deere factory, and I just thought that stamp was really cool, so I wanted to keep that and utilize it in part of the tool wall build, and it worked great to house my chisels. My card scraper holder is just a piece of the same cedar 2x with angled slits cut in it, measuring devices, squares, and a mortising marker. Then I have the 3 mallets that I currently own, 2 of which I built. The third came obviously from Mr. Sean Stone over at Stone & Sons Workshop. Then to the left I have all of my saws, my Western style saw, hacksaw, jam saw, bevel gauges, Japanese pull saws, and odds and ends saw, and a coping saw. I'm not really sure the name of that saw, but whatever. Up top is my draw knife and my Lee Nielsen router plane. Here in the center, I have another set of dividers and this old wooden ruler that was my great-grandfather's. This configuration is an homage to my great-grandfather and my grandfather, who were members of this organization. Down low, inside the cabinets on the tool wall, is home to my wood planes. I keep those in there rather than out on the tool wall to keep the dust off of them. And so obviously I built the tool wall to house my tools, but I also made this for a backdrop for this exact purpose, to give you guys something cool to look at while I'm doing intros and outros to my videos. So this has just been a little glimpse inside my tiny little backyard shop, and hopefully guys, someone out there is inspired to build something, because as you've seen, there's not a whole lot in here that's just been brand new or high-end tools. I've gotten what I could when I could, I upgrade where I can, but for the most part I work with what I have, and I'm still able to build some pretty cool pieces out of this little shop. So thanks so much for coming along this little tour of my shop, guys. I really appreciate it. And don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, as well as hit the bell icon so that you can be notified when we release new videos. I really, truly appreciate all you guys and all of your feedback that I get from the comment section. So that's going to do it for this one. And until next time, don't forget to get better every day.